sorry, okay? So, no, she's not an actress. So our main character, am I filming? Oh yeah. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I have not posted on this channel for more than a year now, and I don't have any reasons for it. I just didn't feel like doing it at the time, and today I just felt like doing it again. Actually, not today. For a few days I've been thinking about doing this again, so hi. Okay, so the last time I posted on this channel, I think it was the mid-year book tag, and I have read books since then. I have not just made any videos on them. I think one of the main reasons was because I have not been reading a lot this year. I mean, what is a lot? I mean, like last year, my reading goal was to read 50 books a year, and I think I read around 56, 45. And then last year, my reading goal was for 70 or 75 books, and I read more than that. So, beginning of this year, my goal was set at around 80 books, and I was like, I'll do 80 books. It's not going to be that big a deal. But this year has just not been very good for me health-wise. So, within literally the first 1 month in January itself, I realized I'm not going to be able to read that many books. So I got down my reading goal to 50 books again for this year. So I have read quite a lot, because I think I read more than 35 books till now. But yeah, I think 30 books will be too much for me, will be too little for you, or 20 books will be too little for me, but too much for you. So it's like that. Anyways, I am not going to be talking about all the 35, 36, 37 books that I've read this year, because actually in the beginning of this year I wasn't reading a lot, and I was also kind of experimenting different genres to see if there's anything else for me out there, you know. So that sometimes led to good books, and sometimes led to just books that I was like, no. So I wanted to sit down and talk to you guys about the books that I've read in the past 3 months, because I feel like for the past 3 months I have been loving every single book that I've read, and I think partly it's because I've sort of gone back to my comfort genre, which is fantasy, and a few more stuff. But yeah, majorly fantasy. So that is what we're gonna do today. I'm gonna tell you all the books that I've read in the past 3 months, which is June, July, and August, which is currently going on. So I don't know how many books there are. I have to grab them. I don't remember which ones they are. Okay, so I have all the books that I've written. No, I have all the books that I've read written down. So I'm gonna start off with June. I read just 3 books in June, but June was me slowly getting into books that I really enjoyed. So I'll start with the first one. Where is it? Oh, here. The first book I read in June was Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. I wanted to get back into Stephen King this year really badly. I've read 1 book each year for the past 2 years by Stephen King, and I've genuinely really enjoyed them. But I think just Stephen King is so extensive that I was a little scared of it the entire time. So this year I wanted to get back into Stephen King, and I picked up Dolores Claiborne, which is one of his mystery books. He does not have many mystery books. Thriller mystery, I think he has only 4 or 5, Misery being one of them, and Dolores Claiborne as well is one. One unique thing about this book is that it has no chapters. This book is basically just one woman who has gone to the police and is giving like a big confession of like, yes, I did do this, like I'm confessing to this crime, but in order for you to understand why I did that or didn't do that, I have to tell you my entire story. And it's basically her telling her entire story. Dolores Claiborne is telling her entire story to these inspectors in the police station, and her language is a little crude, so her dialogues and the way she's talking is very interesting, and obviously the story as well is very, very interesting. So this book follows Dolores Claiborne, and she is the maid and the helper for Vida Donovan, who is a very rich person, but a very rich widow, whatever that's called. She doesn't have a husband. And Dolores Claiborne as well, her husband has died mysteriously. Vida Donovan ends up dead, and obviously people think that it's Dolores Claiborne who has done it, because Vida Donovan leaves all of her wealth to her. So she's obviously the main suspect, and that's when she goes into the police station to tell about her story. Majorly her confession includes things that have happened that have happened in her past, which include her abusive marriage with her now dead husband, and why she did things the way she did things. This book was just very, it was dark. I'm not gonna say it was dark. If anyone picks up this book, please look through the trigger warnings because it's kind of dark. This is one of Stephen King's not horror books, it's a thriller book, but still parts of this book were so scary. They were honestly written in such an honest way, written in such a real way, that it felt like those crimes are actually happening. And that's what made it even more creepier and more horror than normal horror books. And I really enjoyed this book a lot, and I would definitely suggest everyone read this book. One more thing, Gerald's Game is one of his books that have been converted into a movie on Netflix, and I watched that when I was younger, like a few years back. And that book and this book are actually connected because both of these books are happening during the eclipse that happened in 1979 or 78. I'm not exactly sure about the year. And both those stories are following two main characters who are going through and who have been going through a very traumatic events in their lives during this eclipse that has happened. And there was also a scene in this book which, because I've seen the movie, so I know what the context of that movie is, even though I've not read the book. So when I read that scene, it was obvious that, oh, she's talking about the character in Gerald's Game. Gerald's Game? Gerald's Game. And yeah, I think it was just a really good book, a great Stephen King thriller book. If you liked Misery, you will definitely like this as well. Yeah. So for this next one, how do I explain this? So I watched Bridgerton season 3, like almost everyone did, and I was dying to see what happens next. So I started reading the books, and I started with The Duke and I, which is the first book. I read this on my Kindle. And see, I did not like Bridgerton season 1 at all. Bridgerton season 2 was great. I loved it. I've rewatched it, I think 3 times, and season 3 I've rewatched again 2 times. But season 1 I hated, and obviously I hated the book as well. The book has a few scenes in them which are very, very controversial. But I think today's audience, but actually it should be controversial back then as well, but today's audience will not take it very well. So when I read that scene, I was like, what the hell is happening? Why is Julia Quinn? Why? I mean, it was very weird. The book is very weird, and the only reason why I was pushing myself through the books was because I know I really liked the second season, so I thought I know I'm gonna really like the book as well, and I did want to go ahead with the series, but I have not read that series anymore till now. I will probably when Bridgerton, the next season maybe comes out, I'll get enthusiasm again. But yeah, I did not like that book at all. If you don't know, Bridgerton is basically set in the 17th century or 18th century, I don't even know, okay? So the series basically follows a family which is called the Bridgertons. They have, I think, a lot of kids. Those Bridgerton kids, their names are like A, B, C, D. So A for Anthony, B for Benedict, C for Colin, D for Daphne. So like that way, which is very interesting as well as weird. And yeah, I don't really know. It's basically a romance series about a family back in the 18th century or 17th century, I don't know. And each book follows each of the siblings and their love interest. And the series is good. The book series I'm not sure about. But one thing for sure is the first book in the series as well as the first series in the Netflix series are not good. So watch the second series and maybe read the second book as well. And if you have read the second book and if you did like it, please let me know so I can get motivated to read it further. Okay, then the last book that I read in June was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager. I had read only one book before him, but that book was just such a 5-star for me that I constantly think about that book again and again. And House Across the Lake was one of his more famous works, I think, and I've always wanted to read it, but I just couldn't find the book, like paperback or anything. So I finally downloaded it on my Kindle and I read it, and I loved it. I genuinely loved it. It is, I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's a bit different type of thriller than maybe Final Girls was, or you know, your typical thriller is. A little bit different, and I can understand why it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I genuinely enjoyed it. That twist in it was refreshing for me. Our main character, say her husband, recently died, and she has moved back to their lake house, and she's obviously not doing very well mentally. She's drinking a lot, she's lost her job, all of those things have happened. And across from her house, across the lake from her house, to a couple is living. Woman is a model. I don't know what the husband was doing, okay? And her, the main character, because she's obviously not doing very well mentally, she starts sort of spying on them. Initially it's just not for fun, I think, but just it happened by mistake, and then she slowly started noticing something very weird and dangerous going on in their house. And that's all I'm gonna say. I think you should go into it blind, and if anyone talks about it, this definitely is a very good book. And usually when you think about a thriller book, you don't really expect the literature to be very good, but Riley Sager definitely does write very beautifully, and that book, it gave me goosebumps. I was scared at night while reading it, so it was overall a very good experience, and I would definitely recommend that book to everyone. Then starting off with July, I had Pet Sematary by Stephen King. Like I said, I wanted to get back into Stephen King, and Pet Sematary was one of those books that a lot of people said, and Stephen King himself said, is the scariest book he has ever written. And I kind of agree as well as disagree with him, because maybe it was my first actual horror book. That is why I wasn't able to actually grasp that, oh, this is what a horror book is supposed to be like. But I definitely was scared. Like, I was reading on my Kindle, so usually when I read on my Kindle, I sleep, like I read while before going to sleep. But this book I could not read before going to sleep. It was genuinely scary, but it wasn't like a 5-star read for me either. It was a very different vibe, that book. It was a eerie, creepy, scary vibe, and I think that's what Stephen King was trying to do. So this book basically follows our main character, who is a doctor, and he shifted to this small town in Maine, I think. Then naturally shifted into this new house, and that new house, the campus for that new house, it has a pathway that leads to this part in the woods which is called the Pet Cemetery, and it's literally the place where the people in the town go and they bury their pets, right? And it was just a very different, weird vibe that place in general has. I'm not gonna tell you why what happens, because that be a spoiler, but yeah, this is where they have shifted into. And just the book is just crazy, honestly. It's just crazy. I think the most important part, or the most or the biggest thing that made me feel like even more scared while reading this book is that it's kind of related or kind of similar to Stephen King's own experience, because I think he had shifted to this small town where he started teaching as a literary professor in one of the universities, and his house also, like in that town, there was actually a pet cemetery. Obviously not a horror one, but it had a pet cemetery in that town. While they were living, they had this almost bad experience where their son was running across the lawn and he was running towards the main road, but at the final moment before coming onto the road, he fell down and did not get killed by the truck that was coming. So that scene is actually in the book as well. Even stuff that his own daughter had said to him while they were living there is also included in the book. So the pretext of the book is very interesting, you know, the situation in which that book was written, the mindset in which Stephen King would have written that book. That is what gives it an even more scarier vibe to it. And I think if you want a good scare, please do read Pet Sematary by Stephen King. It genuinely is. I mean, I think it does live up to the expectation of it being the scariest book that Stephen King has written. Next up, I want to talk about a series. So I didn't read this entire season one go. I read a few books between the series as well, but I'm just going to talk about the entire series together, because it just doesn't make sense to talk about, you know, the sequels separately. So I'm just going to talk about it as a whole. Ember in the Ashes Quartet by Sabaa Tahir. This is a 4-book series, a quartet, but I have only read 3 books so far. So first we have An Ember in the Ashes, Torch Against the Night, and then A Reaper at the Gates. The fourth book I have not read yet, but I will definitely get to it soon. This is a YA fantasy, and it's gruesome. It has a great magic system, a great universe, great characters, great plot, but also it's very gruesome. There's nothing sugar-coated in this series. It's gonna leave you heartbroken and a little bit affected by it. For me, this is not a 5-star series yet. I don't know why, because it has all of the elements, all of the ingredients to be a 5-star series, but it just isn't as of now. And I think I'm fine with that as well, because I did genuinely enjoy this book a lot. Like, I would give it a solid 4.5 stars, which I think is still a very high rating. Tell you a little bit about the first book. In this world, the country or the entire place is ruled by the Martial Empire, okay? And these marshals, they have enslaved the scholars, the scholar community. Like, they do massacres against them, genocides against them. They literally just enter into these scholar slums and they just take away people and like execute them and stuff like that. They do gruesome crimes against the scholars, and overall the scholars are basically not having a good life, okay? And this book starts off with our main character, Laya. She's a scholar, and literally in the beginning of the book, I'm not giving any spoiler, her entire family is killed in front of her, and her brother is arrested, and she has to run away, okay? And at that moment, the only thing that she can think about is to help her brother, rescue her brother. And to do that, she goes and asks for help from the scholar resistance, with whom her family has some sort of connection, both good and bad, okay? So in order to get help from the scholar resistance, she agrees to being a spy for the resistance and enter as a slave in the military academy for the marshals, right? And in the military academy, we have our second main character, Elias Venturia, Elias, okay? So he's one of the marshals that is training in that academy, but he's different from the others. He does not believe that the scholars should be treated this way. So Elias and Laya, they both meet at this academy, and then things happen. I'm not going to tell you a lot. All the books have been really, really great. There's so much stuff happening. Like I said, there's nothing being sugar-coated here. If someone's dying, they're dying brutally. Like brutally. And I just love the series as a whole so much because of the characters as well. I love the main characters. We also have another female character, Helena, who is Elias's best friend at the academy, but she's a little different from Elias. She believes that the Empire is doing the right thing. They're supposed to rule over the other people, but over the series, I think her character growth is, I think, one of my favorite things about the series is Helena's character growth, and obviously Elias and Laya as well, but for me, I think Helena is the one who does it, really. Helena or Helene, I'm not sure, I'm bad with names, okay? But yeah, overall I am loving this series. I think if you want, you know, those desert vibe fantasies, this is one of the best ones that you can pick up, I think, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm definitely going to read the second book, the fourth book next, and maybe in the next video I'll let you know, entire review of the entire series, if you know, from the beginning till the end, if it really is worth it or not. But I think for these 3 books, it definitely is definitely worth it. So please do pick up if you want to read a YA fantasy, which is not so YA, more gruesome, but still a great read, honestly. That's all I'm gonna say about it. Then I read Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is a romance book, and I usually do not read a lot of, I do read romance, but not a lot, because I feel like reading too much romance is just puts me in a reading slump. But this book was genuinely very good. This book had me laughing out loud, crying out loud, having just very physical reactions to this book. I loved it a lot. In this book, we follow our 2 main characters who are doctors, and the male main character actually suffers from severe anxiety, like really bad anxiety. And I think the way his character is written, the way he talks, his dialogues, everything is just so, his inner monologue as well, his POV is just so nicely written that I think even if you do not suffer from anxiety on that level, you can understand it, and you can, like, the undertones of those feelings, I think, are there in almost everyone who suffers from even a little bit of anxiety. Those undertones of those feelings, of those panic attacks, those anxiety attacks, you can really relate to that. And it's just beautifully written, beautifully written. the female main character as well, she's not suffering from anything of that sort, but she also, I think I've just loved her character a lot. This book starts off with a male main character moving into the hospital in which the female main character works, and the reason why he has to do that is because he broke up with his ex-fiance or ex-girlfriend, I'm not exactly sure. He broke up with her, and she got together with his brother, so it's very fucked up, and he is kind of okay with it but also not very okay with it, and now they're getting married. So he had to move away from that hospital in which they were also working, and he shifted to this hospital where our female main character is there. And I don't exactly remember what happens further, which I think is fine because I don't want to give any spoilers. But yeah, our main characters, they start talking and they start hanging out. And I think one of the best things about this book is because the male main character has very severe anxiety, he writes letters to the female main character, and she also writes back through letters, and that is how they converse, you know, most of the time in the books. And I think that was just so sweet, so cute. I really enjoyed this book. I don't want to give too much details about them. I don't want to tell you what the tropes are because I feel like giving away the tropes of a romance book are basically spoilers, right? I mean, what else does a romance book have other than the tropes? And if you're just gonna tell them these are the tropes, that's a spoiler. But yeah, it has pretty popular tropes is all I'm going to say. I really enjoyed the book. One thing that I want to address about this book is that this is not exactly a spoiler, or if it is, you can skip. But this book has not a few, but it has one scene where it leads to a miscommunication between our characters, and usually people hate the miscommunication trope, and it's just very frustrating because it's like, just talk, just talk. And I still think Abby Jimenez did that trope very, very well, because just the way that they resolved that miscommunication was just so real and so heartwarming. It brought tears. Like I was crying. And also the banter between those characters is so nice that it had me laughing out loud. So yeah, I think overall this book was definitely amazing. I do not recommend romance books a lot because I feel like, it's like a guilty pleasure for me reading romance books. But this one genuinely was a very good book, and I would definitely recommend anyone who wants to get into romance, wants to start reading romance, or you do read romance but not as much like me, and you just want to have a dab of romance in the middle. This is definitely a great book to start that with. So next up, I read The Dead Zone by Stephen King. So now I had read a few books by Stephen King and I wanted to read more. So I decided to start reading the Castle Rock stories by Stephen King. So they're basically a bunch of novels, bunch of stories that Stephen King has written in and surrounding Castle Rock, Maine. It's a town. I started the Castle Rock stories in order. The first one being The Dead Zone. Okay, this book was very, very interesting. I think I want to put out a big statement out there because I've loved all Stephen King books, but this might be, I think, my favorite book because it was just wow. Like, I don't think I've ever read a book which has a plot structured the way Stephen King structured The Dead Zone. Okay, so the book follows our main character who is not from Castle Rock. Okay, he's from a surrounding place, whatever, and I think he had an accident, an accident when he was a kid, and ever since then he kind of has this thing in the back of his mind which he calls Dead Zone, where he remembers things but he doesn't exactly know what the name is, or it's like a blank for him. He doesn't think too much about it because he's a kid, his parents don't notice. He grows up and then he suffers an even bigger accident and he goes into a coma, and when he comes back from the coma, that dead zone at the back of his mind, I don't know how to explain it, it's sort of like expanded in a way where he can tell things in a very weird manner. And honestly, me explaining the story, it feels like, yeah, okay, that's like a overdone plot, right, where this person now can think and he can figure out these things and all that stuff. But I think the way it's written in this book is very unique. This book is not exactly a horror book, but that concept of the dead zone, which the main character, experiences and has, was written in such a scary manner where I was getting scared. Again, this is one of those books that I did not want to read before going to sleep. It was scary, it was definitely scary. This book also follows the Castle Rock Stranglers. So there is a serial killer in this town of Castle Rock, and we actually come across the Castle Rock Strangler in the second half of the book, right? And basically the person, the main character who has suffered or is experiencing the dead zone, I think helps to solve that murder, and then a lot of things happen. I don't want to give too much details because I feel like the lesser you know, the better. And it's just the plot of this book, the way it's structured, is one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. It's just so well written, where we are first focusing on something else that's scaring you, it's completely scares you to your core, and that we're focusing on something else that is so gruesome. Like, it's just a combination of all different types of horrors, I think, and it's all done so well, so very well. And I think it's a great introduction to Castle Rock as a town. And yeah, I just loved this book. I think if I would suggest Pet Cemetery or Dead Zone, I would definitely recommend Dead Zone. I think Dead Zone was better than Pet Cemetery, which I think is a big thing, right? I think now we're starting our August reads. The first one I want to talk to you about is... Hi guys, just a quick interjection over here. I'm editing the video right now, and if I continue talking with all of my August reads as well, this video is going to be more than 40 minutes long, and I'm pretty sure no one has that much time on their hands. So I think I'm gonna divide this into two parts. I'm sorry, I know I said I'm gonna do a June, July and August wrap up, but it's just too long. The video is already 26 minutes long with just my June and July reads. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm gonna end it right here, and I'll see you very soon with part 2, which is going to be all of my August reads. So yeah, I'm really sorry, but I really hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, let me know if you've read any of the books that I just talked about, or if you know, have any other thoughts. Just let me know, okay? I'll see you very soon. Bye.